Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just give us a couple more minutes. Welcome aboard. We will be starting the presentation in a couple of minutes. So settle down and yeah, welcome to our Arlington Co-op info session. And if you have any questions, you can always drop them in the chat, but for now, just sit back and relax. Hey, Ben, just letting you know that I officially started it. So just waiting for the audience, for folks to join us. We have 9 people on board so far. So
Great.
Yeah, of course. Let's give it another minute. Let's have another 3 or 4 people join and then we can get started.
Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining. As Sakrit mentioned, just be another minute or two.
Let's give it 15 more seconds. Okay, we just got a message from Josh saying, not sure if you're in Arlington. We have a massive storm pushing through right now. Absolutely. I am in DC and a storm is brewing. So thanks for the heads up. And yeah, the weather's not ideal outside. But on that note, let's get started, Ben.
All right. Thank you, Sakrit. Welcome everybody. Hopefully the weather allows people to tune in and everybody's internet's working and power is on and all that sort of stuff. The great news is if it's not, this information session is being recorded and you can watch it at your leisure. We'll be sending that out tomorrow or so, just a recording of the webinar. So I'm Ben Hoyne. I'm the program associate in Virginia for Solar United Neighbors, joined by my colleague Sukrit Mishra, who is in the Washington, D.C. office, and he helps support our solar efforts, not only in Virginia, but also in the District of Columbia and Maryland and beyond. So welcome. This is a solar and EV charger co-op information session. We'll focused on Arlington and Northern Virginia. Our colleague, Helen Reinecke was not able to join this evening, or at least participate as a panelist. She's under the weather and we send her our best, but she's been a longtime partner with Arlington County, and so thrilled to have Arlington County's partnership on this co-op once again, along with the City of Falls Church. So just some quick housekeeping. Let you know that you can submit questions in the chat. Sakrit will be monitoring the chat, and I'll be taking breaks as we go along here to make sure that all questions are being answered. And also, as I mentioned, that this webinar is being recorded. So what is Solar United Neighbors? We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We are vendor neutral. So we're unaffiliated with any company or product. Really, we rely entirely upon community engagement and involvement. So that means you. We started in DC long ago, but we're a national nonprofit now with programs in 12 states. We help folks nationwide through our help desk, which Sakrit and some of his colleagues help manage. And you can certainly contact the help desk at any time. And we really bring people together to address barriers to information, red tape, technology, policy advocacy as well. And I'm trying to move my screen here as the sun comes along this afternoon here. And I'm in Richmond, where it's not storming, just hot. And additionally, we represent solar owners and consumers, as well as prospective solar owners and solar consumers. We started way back in 2007, so about 15 years ago. Our founder and executive director, Anya Schoolman, pictured here in the center of the photo, helped about 50 homes in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of Washington, D.C. go solar. Anya's son, Walter, who's on the left in that photo, and his friend Diego on the right, saw the movie An Inconvenient Truth and came home and said, "Mom, we have to go solar." Well, they looked into it and found a lot of challenges. There was only 2 companies installing solar in the district at that time. They heard wildly exorbitant things on prices and on permitting and on basics like what type of material to use and how do you fasten it to your roof and all sorts of stuff. So they decided to organize their neighborhood, and they got about 100 folks in the neighborhood interested in going solar. They kind of worked through the process, worked through all that red tape, and really they came together to go through those barriers. It took about 2 years, and then eventually about 50 homes in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood went solar. And so with that, a lot of media attention started to come, and people from across the District of Columbia, across the Mid-Atlantic region, and really across the country started to call Anya and ask her how she did it, because they wanted to do the same thing. And so really it was kind of a happy accident the way that Solar United Neighbors was founded. And so started working in DC and then also in Virginia, Maryland. We've been in Virginia since about 2012, 2013. I myself have just been a part of the team since last year. And now in 2022, we have members in all 50 states. We've run over 300 solar co-ops like this one. We have about 50 staff across 4 time zones. And as I mentioned, we have program specific staff in 12 states across the country. Our impact specifically, as I mentioned, we're in 12 states. We've helped over 6,000 families go solar. That has led to the installation of 54 megawatts that's on people's roofs and a little bit on their property. And that's the equivalent to a utility scale size power plant on individual rooftops. In Virginia specifically, we've helped over 1,100 families go solar and helped install over 8 megawatts. We also work on policies of the General Assembly, the State Corporation Commission, local municipalities, various commissions to expand solar rights and access and increase solar deployment. And we're working towards an equitable energy system. We know that rooftop solar lets communities invest locally, creates good local jobs, and brings control of the energy system within our reach. And we're working towards a new energy system that everyone can participate in, one that's fair and equitable. Our theory of change, our organizational vision, really has 3 parts to the stool. Again, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So first and foremost, we help people go solar. That's one of the things we're doing now. We support new solar participants along with folks that have current existing systems. We are a installer and technology neutral, as I mentioned. And then as folks go solar, we also help them join together. We have a lot of resources that bring folks together. We have an email listserv and a Virginia-specific Facebook page, and I'll have Sakrit drop those in the chat. We also do things like happy hours and solar events. We actually had an event in Arlington back in May, and I'm sure we'll be doing more. I was actually just in Harrisonburg last night. And we'll be doing more stuff along the I-81 corridor. We're working in Hampton Roads, working in Richmond, really across the Commonwealth to help folks join together. And then finally, we fight for energy rights. We are a nonpartisan organization. We know that solar energy is free and that the government or a monopoly utility company should not restrict your access to it. And so we help pass laws, expanding net metering, preventing homeowners associations from installing undue burdens on their residents from installing solar on their homes. We represent solar owners. We know that as more laws will pass, more people then have access to go solar, and then our cycle continues. It's kind of the basics of what we'll cover today. We'll go over how solar co-ops work. We'll talk about solar technology, batteries and EV chargers, and also solar economics. And I'll take a couple of breaks along the way just to check in on the chat. I can't see the chat right now. I've got a lot of PowerPoint stuff in my face. So I will check in on occasion with Sakrit to say, how's the chat doing? And is there any questions we need to answer? All right, well, it sounds like we're doing okay. So we'll start moving right along and talk about how a solar co-op works. And so really at its most basic, a solar co-op is a voluntary buying group that leverages discounts. Our job is to really give you the tools to make an informed decision. This is not myself or Secret or Solar United Neighbors making the decision for you. We're just really trying to make you an informed consumer and trying to give you those tools so you can make that decision for yourself. During this solar co-op, we'll support you throughout the process. As I mentioned, connect you with fellow solar enthusiasts and become part of a growing movement. It is important to note that the group has a beginning and end and a limited time to get this specific co-op pricing, which is really, usually a kind of a bulk discount that we're getting. We'll have Secret drop the co-op guide into the chat. And then additionally, I want to make sure that folks know there is no obligation to join the co-op. It's free to join the co-op. You do not have to go solar. If you do so, that'll be a decision you make, for a contract between you and the solar installer. It would be weeks or months down the road if and when that time comes. So you certainly don't have to do that. So it's free to join the co-op and free to work through the process with Solar United Neighbors. To give you a sense of the timeline for the solar co-op, and again, this is really a stakeholder-driven process. We encourage you to participate, and learning is really a key part of the process, like what we're doing right now. And so in months 1 and 2, learning, attending a free solar co-op information session, encourage you to sign up and spread the word. The co-op, this particular co-op goes until the end of the summer, until about Labor Day. And so certainly have a few more months to get your friends and neighbors on board as well. Once you join the co-op, we'll send you some emails. That's kind of part of the process to help get you going and send you materials to learn with. We'll also screen your roof to see if it's a good fit for solar. And then once we get kind of critical mass, we will actually select the installer, and it's not Solar United Neighbors selecting the installer, but it's really a committee made up of your peers. And this actually took place in May. The co-op opened in April, and we already had 100 folks signed up, I think just about right at the beginning. And so a group of co-op members on an evening, a weeknight in May, joined together for a few hours to review the various bids. I think we had 4 or 5 bids from different solar installers in the region. And we went through things like price and materials and warranties and all sorts of other things, and ultimately selected SCW Solar Energy World to be the installer for this particular co-op. What we do as Solar United Neighbors, we do background checks. We help get the competitive bids. But again, it's the decision on which installer to go with is made by the committee of members of the co-op. And then in kind of months 4 through 8, we head towards the sign-up deadline, as I mentioned, for this co-op that's around Labor Day. We'll also help you get a proposal and evaluate a proposal. We're happy to help you evaluate the proposal from the co-op. We'll even help you evaluate a proposal that you get elsewhere. We certainly encourage folks to shop around. This is kind of like buying a car. It's a big ticket item and not something you should go into, right away or real quick without doing your due diligence. We certainly encourage you to do that. You can sign a contract with the installer. Usually after you sign the contract, it takes a couple months, several months, maybe 2 to 4 months before your installation occurs. And then once everybody's had their installation take place, we'll throw a party and get everyone together. Since this group goes until Labor Day and folks might not be signing, some of the last ones might not sign a contract until, into September or even early October. Some of those installs will be taking place over the winter. So it'll likely be the springtime before we have our party. All right, before getting into solar tech, any questions, Secret, that I need to be aware of?
So far so good, Ben. No questions, and apologies for the pause earlier. We did have some lighting issues here, but so far so good.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to have you aboard. Well, we'll just keep on trucking with solar technology. How do solar panels work? What we're talking about today is solar photovoltaic, or PV. There's other technologies like solar thermal that are used to heat hot water, usually along coastlines and in other kind of warmer areas. like Hampton Roads or something like that. But that's not really what we're talking about today. We're talking about solar photovoltaic PV, which is the panels like you see in the photo there. Important thing to note about solar photovoltaic is it generates electricity, creates electricity in direct current or in DC current. In terms of what the panels are made of, you can see on the left-hand side, most panels are made of silicon. That's the dominant technology. But really what I want to stress on the left image is that these panels are really well protected. You can see there's a lot of layers of protection in there. It's really become industry standard that solar panels will last 25 years or more. So at least 25 years is the expected life of a solar panel. And they're really well protected from hail, wind, rain, snow, all that sort of stuff. Panels usually historically have been about 3 feet by 5 feet. Now some of them are 4 by 6. So in that space, 40 pounds is about average approximate weight for a panel. The really important thing to note about solar panels is they're measured in wattage. And that's important when you get your proposal. It'll be in terms of wattage, not, do I have 12 panels or 15 panels, but it'll be how many watts does my solar system generate? And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So as I mentioned, wattage is really important. Your system actually be measured in kilowatts. So a single panel is measured in watts. A kilowatt is 1,000 watts or a kW. And so as you add, panel upon panel, you quickly get beyond 1,000. And so that's what we'll be talking about, a kW system. So just to give you an idea in the image here, a 300 watt panel, which is kind of a lower efficiency panel, not too uncommon these days. If you imagine if you had 12 300 watt panels, that would be 3,600 watts or 3.6 kilowatts kW. And so to give you an idea, you could have, again, 12 panels, 300 watts, 3.6 kW system. Alternatively, you could have 400 watt panels. That's also very common now. And so if you had 400 watt panels, and you had 9 of them, that would also be 3,600 watts or 3.6 kW. So I just want to express that you can have 12 panels at 300 watts to get 3.6 kW, or you can have 9 panels at 400 watts that also gives you 3.6 kW. So you can see the output, kind of the efficiency of your panels is the same. The wattage is the same and with a different number of panels. So it's really important to know what your panel can generate, what your system can generate, I should say. And when we talk about, I have a 3.6 kW system, it's kind of like miles per gallon on a car. My car gets 40 miles to the gallon or whatnot. That's in ideal conditions, right? When you're driving perfectly, you don't have the air conditioner on, you're stopping and going, what have you. With panels, it's the same thing. It's you're generating that kind of production when it's 12 noon, the sun is high in the sky, there's no shading at all. It's not too cold, but not too hot. It's really Goldilocks conditions out there. And so, again, it is measured in terms of that, but I just want folks to know you're not always generating that. Obviously, in the early morning, late afternoon, when you get a little bit less sun protection, you won't be generating as such. And in addition to kilowatts, so again, your system is measured in kilowatts. When you get a proposal from an installer, it'll be 5 kW or 10 kW or 15 kW or whatever it is. Those would be common sizes. Your production is measured in kilowatt hours, and your electricity usage is measured in kilowatt hours. So when you get a bill from Dominion or Novec or whoever your electric utility company is, it's going to be billed in kWh or kilowatt hours, and that's just really the amount of energy used over a period of time, right? Over an hour. And so on your monthly bill, it'll be that you used a few thousand kWh or what have you. And so that's important to note as you're reading the bill, and that's your solar installer will ask you for your bill. That'll be one of the first things they do, because it actually has the past 12 months of usage on your electricity bill, and they'll be able to tell how much you use in a year. And there's a lot of seasonal fluctuations with that as well, because a lot of your electricity bill depends on when you're running your air conditioner and your heater. So in the spring and the fall, your electrical load, your usage is going to be a lot different than it is in the wintertime. So that's just kind of some important terminology to know. Again, your system's measured in kW or kilowatts, and you are billed in kilowatt hours because that's how much energy you're using over a period of time. Some important components to your system, first and foremost, is the inverters. The inverters are kind of like the brains to your system. They talk to the grid. They can talk to your phone on a cool little app. That it will become your new best friend that shows you how much your system's producing. Sometimes you can even get how much energy you're consuming at that time. But to quickly go over these inverters, a string inverter, like on the left, this is mostly used for ground mounts or commercial installation. So that's not too common in the Arlington co-op. You can have a string inverter with a DC optimizer or a micro inverter. And both of those will give you panel level output where you can see how much each panel is producing at any one time. And the most important thing that the inverters do is they can convert the direct current that's produced by the panel to alternating current or AC current, because that's what your home uses. And so the inverters condition the electricity for usage in your home. And the installers will have multiple options, and usually they'll make a suggestion on what type of inverters you get. In addition to a panel inverter, you need a way to attach the panels to the roof. And that's where racking comes in. It's really a pretty common basic system nowadays. This is an asphalt shingle roof, which is the most common that we have in Virginia, is a great roof for solar. That'll be another important factor is what type of roof do you have, and is your roof good for solar? So in addition to asphalt shingle, some other good roofs for solar are a standing seam metal roof, and then also a rubber membrane roof is really good. The one type of roof that doesn't really work well with solar is slate. Most installers don't work on slate roofs for solar, and those that do know it's a really delicate installation, and so usually they have an upcharge to do so because it takes a lot more time and then more labor, etc. They have to be really careful walking around on that slate and fastening things to the slate. Another important component of your solar array is the electrical panel that you have at your house, and that's how the panel hooks into your home. It's really a simple connection into the panel. Most homes do not need an electrical system upgrade. You will need a little bit of breaker space. Also important to note that installers, in addition to asking for your bill, one of the first things they're going to do is ask you for a photo of your electrical panel. So don't be alarmed when they ask for a picture of an electrical panel. That's really for them to determine if it's outdated, if it has enough space for the breakers they need, and all that sort of stuff. And if it is, they'll be able to quickly recognize that and add that to the cost as needed. And some other important factors on your roof and determining if it's good for solar is the orientation. We're in the Northern Hemisphere. In general, you want to face towards the equator. Ideally, that's southerly facing roofs, but we don't really have much control over the direction of our roof. So you can also do east facing or west facing, even west by northwest, as you're getting that good afternoon sun. Those will all work. Really, what you just want to avoid is due north. Additionally, you want to make sure that you have little or no shading on your panels or on that roof face that's going to be having the panels. And this is especially true during the high generation hours of about 9, 10 in the morning to about 3 in the afternoon. You're going to want to make sure you have enough space to mount panels. If you have things like chimneys, dormers, gables that really change your roof plan a whole bunch, those can just complicate the installation a little bit. But first and foremost, you'll need to have sufficient space to put panels up there. And then you don't need a new roof, but you do need a newer roof, really an undamaged roof. We recommend a minimum of 10 years of a remaining life for your roof. If you have any significant repairs that might be coming due in the next couple of years, we probably recommend that you do those first, because a lot of the cost of a solar installation is in labor. And so if you're paying someone to put a solar array on your roof, and then in just a few years, they need to pull those down so that you can do some significant roof repair, that's just additional labor costs that you're going to have to cover that could be avoided if you just took care of that all at the same time. If your roof's not a good fit for solar, not to fear, you could also do a ground mounted system. As I mentioned, not as common in Arlington because space can certainly be a challenge. But if you do have the space, if you're, out in Prince William or Loudoun or even outer Fairfax or something like that, and you have the yard space to allow it, ground mounted system can be great. A couple of reasons are you can choose which direction it faces. So, you can more properly orient it to the sun. So it'll generate more energy, more electricity because it has a better efficiency to the sun. So that's the positive. Some of the negatives you can see in this photo, there's a kind of a rack that has been assembled and made. And so that's takes parts and material, right? In addition to labor, right? It's more time consuming and more of a cost to create the racking system and to install it. Additionally, you're going to need to run your electrical wires to the nearest meter on a roof that's pretty close by to your electrical panel. But if you're out in your yard, that's just extra wiring, extra labor, extra materials that it's going to cost. So a ground mounted system will usually be a bit more expensive, but it's also can be a bit more efficient at generating solar electricity. Some of the frequently asked questions we get, how are the warranties? Panels, as I mentioned, usually have about a 25-year of a production warranty. They're going to maintain a really solid efficiency for at least 25 years. They've got no moving parts, and so there's not really a lot that can fail or degrade. A manufacturer defect usually be anywhere between 10 to 25 years. That'd be if you had something wrong with a panel that didn't affect its production, maybe like a piece of metal hanging off the side or something like that. Your inverters usually have about a 10 to 25-year warranty. And then the installer will often give a workmanship warranty that'll cover something like a roof penetration or a conduit run. We've seen those between 3 years and 10 years on the industry standard. In terms of homeowners insurance, you certainly want to add this to your homeowners insurance. A solar array becomes part of your home, and if something were to happen to your home, tree falling and whatnot, this would be part of your home and covered under your homeowners insurance. So be sure to call your company and have it added to your policy. The industry standard is that bills should either not go up or increase slightly. If you do find that your homeowner insurance company is quoting you a significant increase, we encourage you to shop around because that's not the industry standard. In terms of maintenance, as I mentioned, these are really strong panels. They stand up to snow. You don't need to clear the snow. We get plenty of rain to clean the panels. They're hail resistant. And so really you don't need to do anything to the panels. As I mentioned, you'll have online monitoring on an app where you can really see the performance of the panels from the comfort of your own couch. And you can actually identify if one of the individual panels is having a lower production or even not producing, you'll be able to determine that on the app and then call the installer and have them come out and fix it. So for no reason should you have to get up on your roof and do anything of any sort to your solar array. As I mentioned, they last over 25 years. If you're in a homeowners association, the good news is that Solar United Neighbors, through our advocacy work, as I mentioned in 2020, we passed legislation and helped pass legislation to make it harder for homeowners association to oppose unreasonable restrictions. And so many homeowners associations are unaware of that, right? There's been a lot happening since 2020. But certainly we can help you if your homeowners association is giving you trouble about putting up solar. And if you're in a historic district like Old Town Alexandria or something, certainly just encourage you to work with the installer. They've got a lot of experience installing in these areas and certainly have dealt with permitting offices and jurisdictions to get those jobs done. So I'll pause there real quick to see if there's any questions before moving forward.
We do have a few questions, Ben. So a couple of them have to do with the electric panels. I'm not sure if you know the answer, but generally speaking, how many breakers are typically needed in an electric panel when it comes to a solar installation?
That's a good question. I couldn't tell you generally. I have a little over 5 kW system, and it's about a 240 breaker. So I don't know if that means if you have a 10 system, you need two 240s. So, probably 2 to 4, because a 240 takes 2 slots more or less. So it's not a tremendous amount, but it is a bit. But your installer would know that when they're giving you a proposal, or even at the initial call, they would be able to let you know that.
Great. And the second question, it's a bit more specific. So Kathleen and John do not have breaker space in the electric panel. Will it have to be replaced if it's 200 amps? Do you know this?
They would probably just need a sub panel, which is just kind of an additional panel. They wouldn't replace the panel. Again, that would be something to talk to the solar installer, their electricians. You could talk to them about that, or any electrician to add a sub panel. But you probably would need to add some kind of capacity in your electrical panel.
Got it. And the third question has to do with a specific type of roof. So Donna wants to do solar along with the installation of a new metal roof. Can that happen with the co-op? I mean, I can start off on this answer. It depends on the installer we are working with and who we select, say in August. Or I mean, wait, this is for SEW. Do you know if SEW is offering this service, or if they have any adders for this? Or
If they have a roofing service?
yeah, for metal roofs, do you know if they're specializing in this, or they have partners who help with this?
That's a great question. We probably need to research that and get back to you.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, Donna, many of the installers have a roofing company that they work with, that they'll then refer out. It's not a special discount by any means. It might be that they can help, put you ahead in the line or something like that. And a few of these companies even have in-house roofers that they work with, but most of them contracted out to kind of have a partnership. That would generally be asphalt shingle roofs. If somebody were to have a metal roof, I don't know if the installers will work with that. I mean, they'll certainly install solar panels on it, but would they be able to facilitate an installation? I'm not sure. We'd have to dig into that.
Okay.
That would certainly be something you need to get done before the installation occurs. Was that it?
That's it for now. You can
All right.
carry on.
Keep on rolling. So just a quick recap on some of the important terminology. Your solar array, here number 1, generates solar electricity, sends it to your solar inverter, which then converts it to AC current, excuse me, and then sends it onto your electrical panel. And your house has the right of first refusal for any electricity generated by the solar panels. And so everything that your house needs will be used by the solar array, if the solar array can meet that capacity. In an ideal world, or during the peak part of the day, the sunny day, you'll actually be generating surplus energy, surplus electricity, and that'll then pass through your electrical meter and be fed onto the grid, where you'll kind of accrue credits. It's called net metering, which we'll get into here in a minute. If your solar system is not generating enough electricity to meet the demand of your house, then you simultaneously your panel and your meter will pull electricity from both your solar array and also from the grid simultaneously to instantaneously meet the exact amount of demand and load that you need. And then if you're generating nothing or a limited amount, nighttime, what have you, you'll just be pulling everything from the grid as you normally do. So really your solar array and the grid kind of work in harmony constantly throughout the day to ensure that your house is powered as it is now when it's just 100% on the grid. And so net metering is an important thing. As I mentioned, if you have a surplus, usually during the day, folks might be at work. They might not be running the dishwasher, it might not be cooking. Maybe it's before the air conditioning kicks on, those kind of things. You can generate a surplus of electricity and push it onto the grid, and you will actually be compensated for that. You will build up credits with your electric utility. And then you will use those credits in the evening or on rainy days or what have you, when you're not generating as much electricity. So you're kind of pushing electricity onto the grid. You accrue credits, kind of like the old rollover minutes of cell phones. And then when the sun is not shining, you will then use those credits and pull electricity off the grid. In an ideal world, at the end of the month, it would be perfectly balanced, or at the end of the year. Obviously, that rarely ever happens, that somebody would be ideally balanced, but it certainly can. And net metering is a tremendous part of this this balancing act. And a couple of important notes on net metering. It's a one-to-one credit. So when you're putting electricity from your solar array onto the grid so they can be used by other homes, you are getting a full credit for that. It's not 80 cents on the dollar or 50 cents on the dollar or anything like that. It's a full credit to Dominion or whoever your utility is. And then as you're pulling electricity off the grid, again, it's that same amount. So it's a one-to-one credit. As I mentioned, there's kind of daily and seasonal surpluses depending on the weather. The spring and the fall, you're going to be using less electricity than you will in the winter and summer, because of your HVAC load. And so that's why you actually, as I mentioned, the installer will look at your bill and see your usage over 12 months, because it's really important to look at it for an annual billing cycle. And then you can figure out what works for your budget in terms of how much of an annual offset can you do. In my house, as I mentioned, I have about a 5 kW system. I offset maybe 2/3 of my electricity over a year. So in the spring and the fall, I might actually offset all of it, but in the winter and summer, nowhere close. And it works out to about a 2/3 offset, which works for me, and has drastically lowered my electricity bills and all sorts of that stuff. If you can do 100%, that's great. If you can do 25%, that's still great. So whatever works for you and your budget, and you'll be able to go over those options with the installer when they do a real analysis of your roof and your electricity generation and usage. I will have Script put the net metering guide into the chat. And this is really a critical tool for rooftop solar to get that fair credit. And just kind of one final note on how this affects your bill. Well, let's just say you use 300 kilowatt hours in a month. And your solar array produced 250 kilowatt hours. Doesn't matter when your array produced that, whether that was used at your house or on the grid. Dominion knows and the grid knows that you supply 250 kilowatt hours, and then at the end of the month, you just pay the difference. So that's 50 kilowatt hours. And so that's kind of how it works in my house, because again, I don't have a full offset. Some folks might be 300 and 300. There are some other things. If you are having 100% offset, you will not have a bill of $0. There's a fixed connection charge, so that you're connected to the grid. It's $6.58 a month in Dominion territory plus taxes. That's usually $7 or $8. If you do have a surplus at the end of the month, like in the spring and the fall, that'll carry over to the next month. And so it might be that you're building up those credits in March and April, but using them all up in July and August. And also an important thing to know, like your annual billing cycle is not January 1. It's actually based on the date that your solar array was installed. It doesn't really matter what that date is for you. For me, it's in November. For you, it might be something totally different. It's just important for your knowledge to know that you're not looking at a January 1 cycle unless you happen to have your system installed on New Year's Eve. Or New Year's Day, but it's important to know that it's an annual cycle, but it's based on your connection date, and so everybody's annual and cycle dates are different. All right. Also wanted to talk about batteries real quick, and so this is pretty counterintuitive. So really want to stress it is that when the power goes out, your solar system will shut down automatically, and you will not have access to the electricity generated by your solar system. So I want to say that again. When the power goes out, your solar array will shut down and not power your home, and you will not have power just like everybody else. And the reason for this is it's a major safety issue. As I mentioned before, if your solar array is feeding electricity onto the grid because it has a surplus, and at the same time there's a line worker trying to repair the line somewhere, they're going to get electrocuted by the solar electricity coming off of your house, right? And so the inverters, the brain of your system, is in constant communication with the grid, and it knows that the grid is shut down. It senses the grid is shut down, and so it stops feeding electricity into your home, into your panel, into your meter instantaneously. And then once the grid's back online, your inverter will sense that and it'll start back up. But so most folks think, oh, well, I have solar, and so when the power goes out, I'll still have electricity. So again, I want to stress that is not true. However, if you do want to have power when the power goes out, when the grid is down, you can do so via a battery storage system. And so what this is in essence, you have a wall of batteries or whatnot, and your solar array is tied into those batteries as well. And so when the grid goes down, it can kind of shut off that connection to the grid and just do a loop there between your solar panels and your batteries. Kind of, we call that islanding. So your electricity is islanding between the batteries and the panels. In an ideal world, so the panels will generate electricity during the day, fill up the batteries, and then in the evening, the batteries will power the home for a while in the evening. I should note, it's very unlikely that you would be able to power your entire home through this islanding mechanism. Especially your air conditioner or some other big electricity generators. You'll be able to power probably your refrigerator and some lights and some outlets in your internet and the coffee maker and a couple other important things, but you're not going to be able to just kind of operate business as usual unless you have a tremendously sized system. But it's so important to note that. But as we can see from this chart here, power outages have really increased due to major weather events since 2017. And so it's certainly something to think about. That if you want to have batteries, you might want to consider it because it's becoming more and more common. But it is very expensive. Batteries are really expensive. And actually right now, due to global supply chain issues, they're very hard to get. They're very much back ordered. So it's really challenging, although certainly you can get them as part of this co-op. But usually what will happen is the solar installation will take place first, and the batteries might arrive next year, 6 months from now or something like that. And then they'll be installed. But if something you want to do, you can do. You might want to do this again if you have frequent outages. Probably one of the biggest reasons people do is they have a critical load at their house, like a well pump or medical equipment that they really just can't live without. Also, if you're involved in emergency preparedness, disaster preparedness, you're an essential employee and you really just have to have that power at all times. And some of the disadvantages, it's really expensive. It'll probably double the cost of your installation, ballpark. And it's really complex, right? It's not like a solar panel where there's no moving parts. There's a lot of components that can fail within a battery, but it can be done if it's something you want to do. We actually have webinars and all sorts of information on batteries. I'll have, you can see the webinar we have here. I'll put the link in the chat. In addition, we have a battery guide in the chat. So all sorts of resources that if you want to take a deeper dive into batteries, you can certainly do so. And with that, I'll stop again and see if there's any questions we need to address.
So far so good. We did just get one question on battery backups and whether we can integrate it to a solar system later on. And I was just about to answer it, but the answer is yes. In fact, a lot of people start conservatively where they go for a solar system, wait for a couple of years, assess their needs, and if they really require it, then they can either go back to the original installer or someone else in the market, and they can get that battery integrated to the system. So yes, it's possible, and it's fairly seamless if it's done by a professional or an installer. But no other questions for now.
Great, exactly right. Thanks, Chris. All right, and now we'll move on to the electric vehicle charger, the EV charger, as part of our co-op. We really like to think of solar energy as kind of our local fuel source to power not only homes, but also to power our cars. And if you pair solar with an EV charger, you can save a tremendous amount of money. These numbers are rough estimates. national estimates, but just to give folks a sense, a gas-powered car, we've got it listed at $4 a gallon. Obviously, it certainly can get higher than that. It is higher than that. It can cost you $1,800 a year on gas. If you have an EV powered by solar, you can get maybe 400. Well, if it's powered by solar, it costs you nothing. But if you're even just connected to the grid, where it costs 11 cents a kilowatt hour, it might cost you a few $100s a year. Again, the numbers are not too important because they're all estimates, and different folks say different things. Dominion will tell you can power your car for $1 a day. I think they assume you drive 40 miles a day. Some folks will say that EVs cost $1 a gallon or $1.50 $1.50 a gallon. Anyway, you cut it, it's certainly a much better deal than gas in your car. And so I want to let you know that you can get an EV charger, a level 2 EV charger installed as part of this co-op. An EV charger will also take up space in your electrical panel. It's equivalent. It needs a 240 volt outlet, which is like what your dryer has. But your charging speed can be up to 6 times as fast as a standard outlet, a standard 120 volt outlet. Usually you can get between 10 and even over 30 miles a charge hour, but really depends on the battery and it depends on the system. And usually they come with about a 3-year warranty. If you are thinking about getting a level 2 EV charger, just some things to consider, to think about before you talk to the installer. Where do you want to put it? Do you have a garage space where you could mount it to the wall? Do you have an outdoor driveway where we might need to put it on a pedestal? Some shared space, apartment, etc. So important things to know there, because I mentioned you're going to need additional space in your electrical panel. Best practice nowadays is having it network capable. And so that's where you can monitor your car as it's charging up. You want to make sure your cord length is long enough. The worst thing you could do would be you install it on one side of your garage and you park on the other side of the garage and it just doesn't quite reach. And if you're in a public access space, that's important to consider, and aesthetics. And so these are all things to think about. And we have again a whole bunch of more resources on electric vehicles and EV chargers on our website as well. In terms of the cost on an EV charger, the unit's usually $500, $700. Installation, depending on how far it is from the electrical panel, how many walls they need to punch through or something like that, can be as little as $500, but also up to $2,000 or more. And so usually that's going to be between, let's say, $1,000 and $3,000 for an EV charger installation. There was a federal tax credit last year that expired on December 31st. Currently, that is inactive. There is some hope that Congress will revive that before the end of the year, so that when you're paying your taxes for 2022 in 2023, you could be able to take that federal tax credit. But as of now, it doesn't exist, but we encourage folks to save any receipts you might have. All right. Our final section here is on the economics of solar. And as we can see, costs have dropped tremendously since the 1970s. They've even dropped 73% since 2010. And as I mentioned before, solar is really a long moving parts, and you have a tremendous lifespan. Additionally, it's a great way to hedge against rising utility rates. We, in all our financial assumptions here, we assume, I think, a 2% increase in utility rates. Has increased 3% for the past decade. But this year alone, I think they're going up 9% or something like that. And that's due to the challenges of getting natural gas on the wholesale market. So the return on investment here for a solar array in Virginia is usually 9 to 13 years. But again, that assumes kind of a slow growth, conservative growth on utility prices. If prices continue to increase, your payback period would be even shorter. In terms of the cost of solar, you can see that solar co-op, what they do is they really reduce the soft costs. That's how installers go out and find folks and educate folks and do things like what we're doing right now.
And so we really help bring that soft cost down for an installer. That's how we're able to get such a great deal for folks. Labor costs is pretty standard, and then system component costs, as you can see, has come down tremendously since 2010 as well. All right, here's an example price sheet. There's a whole bunch of numbers on here, and I don't want you to get lost in the numbers or anything like that. Really, what I want you to do is to be like from an installer and know how your system is going to pay you back. And so there's two kind of important categories here. Our net cost, and this is really based on investment, right? This is a hard and fast number. It's not going to change. And then our net profit, that's much more variable. That's based on electricity savings, which depends on, again, we use a conservative 2% interest, 2% growth rate. But if that goes up, and then the solar renewable energy credit, we've also used a pretty conservative number. But both of those are based on how much energy you use and how much your system produces. And so much more variable. So we'll look at the right-hand column, 8 kW. So again, that's an 8 kilowatt system or 8,000 watts. At its most basic, we have 275 a watt as our price here. There's different panels that cost different amounts of money within the co-op. But let's say 275 a watt times 8,000 is $22,000. Important to note, this is turnkey. There's no additional permits. There's no hidden costs. There's no taxes and fees and paperwork and all that sort of stuff like you get when you buy a car or anything else. $22,000 turnkey flat price. And on top of that, in terms of hard and set price, there is a 26% federal tax credit. So this is based off how much money your system costs. So it's 26% off of the $22,000. That's $5,700. Couple important notes on the federal tax credit. One, it is a credit. It is not a refund. So you must have enough federal tax liability to cover, the $5,700. If you don't have that tax liability, you won't be able to take the tax credit. If you don't have quite enough, but you still have a decent federal tax credit, or federal tax liability, I should say, you can roll over that credit for up to 5 years. And so, if you had $1,200 federal tax liability every year, you'd be able to roll that over for 5 years. It is a 26% tax credit for 2022. And this is based on the day your system is installed. So you will need to have your system installed by December 31st in order to get the 26% tax credit. That's why you'll see that installers are going to be incredibly busy throughout the entire month of December, really throughout the whole fall and heading towards that. In 2023, it goes down to 22%. Not a tremendous drop, right? A 4% drop, which on a system, a $22,000 system, that's, I don't know, $800 and something dollars. So certainly not a drop in the bucket, but overall not a deal breaker necessarily. But it's important to know, again, the tax credit, not a refund, 26% as long as your system's installed by December 31st, and then 22% in 2023. So that's the hard and fast numbers, the $16,000 net cost. And then we start to get into variable numbers, right? The estimated savings of 1 year. This is how much your system's producing. So you're no longer paying kind of full freight on your electricity bill to Dominion. So we have that as $1,100 a month, or excuse me, a year. And then over 10 years with a slight growth in the cost of electricity prices, we have that at not quite $12,000. And then over 25 years, we have that as over $32,000. And so you can see just from the electricity savings alone, you're getting pretty close to paying that system off, at almost $12,000, $16,000. There's a $4,000 delta there. Additionally, there's something called a solar renewable energy credit, or an SREC. This is a little complicated, but the basic gist is, as you start generating solar energy on your home, you become a renewable energy producer in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And that has value. And one of the reasons that has value is because Virginia passed a law called the Virginia Clean Economy Act a few years ago, which mandated that a certain amount of electricity was renewable, generated in Virginia, and then that number will go up over time. And so as you are generating renewable energy, Dominion Energy or some other utility or a place like Amazon or Google or any other company that wants to claim they're running their business on 100%, Commonwealth of Virginia solar energy, they can in essence buy, they can take credit for the energy you generated, and there's a market value for that. It's traded with a broker, just like something else, just like anything else on Wall Street, right? There are SREC brokers. I think there's about 4 that operate in Virginia, and we have those on our website. I'll have Sakrit drop that sort of stuff in the chat. Usually an SREC might get, I think right now they're trading around $40 or $50. And in a year on an 8 kW system, again, this is based off how much you generate, so it can fluctuate. You might get 8 or 10 SRECs. So at $40 or $50, this estimate we have is very low. 200. Right now, it's probably closer to 400 or 500. And so if you're doing that year over year, right, that'll help you pay back your system as well. And so again, that's variable. Price goes up, price goes down, but right now it's around $40 or $50. And so you pay your system back in a variety of ways. One, from electricity savings, no longer paying a full size bill, and then also from your SRECs. And then once you paid that system off, over 10 years or so, then you're in essence generating free electricity. So I think that's basically the main points on understanding your proposal and how it's priced. But just wanted to run through those for you. Another quick note on the federal tax credit, as I mentioned, goes from 26 to 22% next year. As of now, it then zeroes out in 2024. So if you're thinking about going solar, now is definitely a great time to do it. The federal tax credit will be completely gone for anyone that doesn't have their system installed by December 31st, 2023. There is hope that this will be extended, part of Congress and the clean energy tax credits and whatnot that were part of Build Back Better, but now it's just part of some standalone package. Looks like we'll know by around September 30th at the end of the budget year, will this become part of the budget reconciliation deal that eventually gets through Congress here in the next couple months. Remains to be seen. This is for residential. For commercial, for small businesses, there is a 10% federal tax credit in 2024 that carries on. Just wanted to make sure everybody is aware of that. And again, it's based on when your system's installed, not when your contract is signed or anything like that. In terms of financing, it's certainly an option. Obviously, it makes the return on investment take a bit longer. We do have a great financing guide that I'll drop in the chat. And probably most importantly, we encourage folks to shop around for financing with credit unions and banks and everything else. A lot of folks will take out a home equity line of credit, or they might refinance their mortgage and include solar on it. There's also other types of loans. There are some banks even that are starting to come out with solar specific loans. And then many of the installers will have financing options through a third party or even in-house. And then as a member of this Arlington co-op, we actually have 2 credit unions that do solar specific loans, the Clean Energy Credit Union and the Community First Credit Union. And again, we have all of that sort of stuff listed on our financing page that hopefully Sakrit can drop in the chat. And with that, wanted to stop and see if there's any other questions.
All right, we do have a couple of questions, which I've had a long day, so I'm not going to type it out. So I'll just answer it out, just while I speak. So the first one has to do with solar technology and how it has evolved over the years. Sabrina wants to know how was it compared to say 7 years ago. In terms of numbers, from what I've seen from the proposals that we have observed or assessed for solar owners in recent years compared to 7 years, it's about the output for the panels. The dimensions have been relatively similar, 3.5 by 5.5, but for that same size, they're more efficient or productive. 7 years ago, the average capacity for a module used to be around 240, 250 watts. That same module today, the average capacity is anywhere from 350 to 360 watts. And some people are now opting for 400-watt panels. So it's just gotten more efficient over the years. Same goes for batteries. They're still pricey, but year after year, they're getting cheaper. In terms of volume, companies are working to economize them or reduce them for the amount of power that they're generating. It will get cheaper over the years, but for every year that you wait, it's an opportunity cost. That's what you're foregoing by relying on the grid. Let's see, second question. Thoughts on solar shingles? In terms of upsides or the pros, I would say you're literally covering one whole segment of the roof with shingles, which means assuming you have no shade or any other factors that are affecting the roof's ability to receive that sunshine, you're producing a lot of solar power or energy compared to your traditional solar panels. Another upside is the ITCs or tax credits. Since this is a component of solar, it is available or applicable to ITCs at 26% this year. On the downside, most roofs are not angled perfectly towards the roof, towards the sun, where they'll be receiving optimal amount of sunshine throughout the day. And that's one of the downsides for shingles. Assuming a roof is not angled in the best way, even though most, if not all of the square footage of that roof is covered with shingles, they're not producing the same level of solar power, or they're not as efficient as they are designed to be. That's one of the flip sides. But if you have more questions or you want to get more thoughts on this from another third party or any other homeowner who may have opted for this, I would recommend posting this on our VA listserv, and I will drop it in the chat section just before we wrap this up. Let's see, anything else? Ben, I think we got one from Peter. What's the home value increase relative to the cost of investment? Do we have a specific number around this, or do you know anything about this?
On the home value, you said?
Yeah, home value. So home value, increase in home value relative to cost of investment.
Right. That's a great question. I don't have a specific number. We do have some resources on home values. I think it's kind of all over the map, right? The value of your home depends on the person that's buying it from you, right? And so there are studies out there that show tremendous increase in the value of homes. It often also depends on the real estate agents and making sure that they're kind of aware. And so if you were to sell a solar home, there's resources out there to make sure that it's marketed appropriately and that the agent is aware of that value. And so it's really a new space, I think. And so there's not a hard and fast number. It's fairly subjective, but we are starting to see trends and consistent data that demonstrate that homes with solar do have an additional value compared to other comparable homes that don't.
Perfect. Just give me 1 second while I add the listserv link. So
Sure.
that's a listserv where, if you guys need a third party's opinion or any other homeowners who have gone solar, join that group. And Ben and I usually moderate it, and you'll get a lot of, leads over there. And just one more question. Sabrina wants to know, does Arlington or Virginia have any specific financial incentives besides the federal ITCs?
No.
I do not recall of anything. I know Maryland has one for EVs, but not
Yeah.
in Virginia for now.
There's not really much in Virginia. It's just the federal tax credit.
Honestly, even SREX, it just started last year. So, it's in its infancy. It's getting better year after year. So yeah, we'll just, I think Kaushik says Loudoun County has one. I'm not sure. I'm not aware of the incentives there, but yeah, I mean, we can get back to you on this. Let me do some research, but yeah, not to our knowledge.
I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
I think Kaushik says that Loudoun County has financial incentives for solar owners. I'm not aware of any, so
Okay.
I can't comment on that, to be
Yeah.
honest. Okay. I think that covers everything.
Great.
Anything else, Ben, or you good?
Appreciate it. Yeah, just kind of to wrap up with folks, what do you do next? So again, hopefully everyone's already joined the solar co-op, but if you haven't, we encourage you to do so. Make sure you're paying attention to updates. We've already done the RFP, as mentioned, that was done back in May. So make sure you're ready for consultation. installation. And again, I encourage you to tell your friends and neighbors. The co-op will be open until Labor Day. Also, we want you to be a smart consumer. That's what we're here for. Join the co-op. Also, again, we have that great listserv. We have a Facebook page specific for Virginia. So encourage you to join that if that's what you're interested in. And just want to say thank you, on behalf of Script and myself. Thank you very much for spending a bit of your Tuesday evening with us. If you have any questions, you can certainly reach out at any time. VA team at solarunitedneighbors.org. And with that, unless there's any other questions,
We do have just one
okay,
more.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry about that, Ben, but
Oh,
it's a highly specific question from, actually, hang on. I think he's just sent it to us, so I guess he wants to keep it personal. So Josh,
Okay.
why don't you do this? I'm assuming you want us to just answer this for you. Reach out to us on VA team at Solar United Neighbors. Either Ben or I will get back to you tomorrow. So I'm just gonna, assume this is a private question. So
okay.
he's asking to drop the email. Sure. So here you go.
Well, with that, we'll let you all go as we kind of wrap things up here. Again, thank you very much for spending some of your Tuesday evening with us. And we hope to see you sometime soon.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks, folks. Take care.